Hi, my name's Karen, and I'm part of the Sisterhood of Hope's Garden. I did a video with Father Michael Stala about an experience that I had with a very severe and deep depression. Um, and I have my daughter here, Elizabeth, today. We're going to chat about my experience with my depression and also Elizabeth's walking along and accompanying me through that depression and my subsequent healing. I had a severe a nervous breakdown in April of 2014, and I suffered from very deep depression and suicidal thoughts for 3.5 years. And then I received a miraculous healing in 2017 through the intercession of Saint Therese, the Little Flower. So my daughter's here today. She offered to come on board with us in my conversations with her about my video. We were chatting about how difficult it is for loved ones and family members to walk along with and accompany people who are suffering from depression and the emotions and feelings and frustrations that they have in trying to help their loved one and feeling at times that things just aren't working right, and that feeling that possibly they start to get hopeless, but they try to maintain hope for their loved one. So Elizabeth's just going to jump in and just start talking and sharing what life was like before the depression and our family and her experience along the way and how she felt when the miracle happened. So just jumping in.
All right. So I guess ultimately, if you were to listen to my mom's video, you'd kind of hear her story and her path and how that led her here. And so for me, where it all began, I'm not sure. Truth be told, I haven't watched her video because I didn't want it to impact anything that I had to say. So my recollection of the first time that this kind of really all came to a head was probably I saw a lot of it in college. The first probably about, she says it was 2014. Yeah. So I saw it starting about 3 years beforehand, and it was just this overwhelming stress that her and my dad had because of the work that they did. And so I ultimately took that as like, I'm going to be as less of a burden as I can be. So she doesn't have to worry about me being as stressed as she was. And nothing really changed much in our relationship other than like me taking a step back, making sure that I didn't add anything to her or onto her plate. And then I really noticed the change when she says that it happened was right when I made a major move in my life, and I went to Washington, D.C. And that's when she started doing all of these tests, trying to figure out what was wrong with her because she knew that she wasn't sleeping and she wasn't she was getting more anxious and more depressed. And for me, I could just notice the black cloud that was kind of hovering over her, and she just started to not become herself. She started to disappear from the person who raised me. She started to kind of almost be smothered by her inability to sleep and her anxiety and her depression. And I'm in the medical profession, and so I was a nurse at the time, and it would be frustrating to me because I knew what was wrong. Me and my brother and my sister, we all knew that she was depressed, she was anxious, she wasn't sleeping. These are the things that were wrong, but it was almost like she kept trying to find something else that was the cause of this. And it was the denial that she was actually depressed and anxious and not sleeping that was the hardest part for us to have to deal with, because we could see it. It was so black and white, and it was just accept it, and then we can deal with like this problem instead of you trying to search for what's actually wrong. Like, just see that it's the depression and we can work on the depression, not, you know, this is the reason, or this is the medical reason I'm depressed. It's just kind of in and of itself an issue. So I had lived apart from the situation, from my mom being sick her entire sickness, which was very difficult. Luckily though, I had my dad and my brother was with her. And that was obviously very helpful for my sister and I, because we lived apart from the situation and what was going on. And unfortunately, it allowed us to kind of allow it to be like put on the back burner, which is something that I regret. But for me to be able to live my life and do what I needed to do at the time, it was necessary, just because I would have driven myself crazy had I just solely been focusing on her sickness. And I knew that she wouldn't want that to be what I was doing with my life. So I made sure to obviously reach out when I could, go home when I could. And during this process and during the years that she was sick, I ended up going back to school. And it was a full-time type of school. I couldn't really quit, but there were multiple times that I reached out to my brother and was like, oh, like, I'll leave, I'll quit school, I'll come home, help you. And he obviously told me, like, absolutely don't stop your life. I have it under control. I'll take care of mom and dad, which was very helpful. So obviously having someone there, someone you trust, helping obviously the person you love is very important, but it doesn't relieve that stress or guilt or anxiety that you might feel about not being able to be present. And now my mom tells me that there were little things that I would do, and I don't even remember them, but
they were.
There's like little moments through her sickness of me just being present and being there, and that let her kind of maybe give her strength or hope
very
or
much so. Yeah.
Something along those
You always
lines.
brought humor into it too. Elizabeth's a humorous person, so she always brought her joy into the room, which was huge.
Yeah. I felt like the only thing that I really could do, since I couldn't be present, was to be joyful and to be positive and to kind of bring a light in her darkness, since I knew that ultimately she didn't have any. And it's hard when you see someone become someone that they are not, and you don't know how to bring that person back, how to dig them out of the hole that they're in, how to really express to them, like, I'm trying to help you, but you're not giving me anything to work off of.
I didn't give you much to work off.
You gave me nothing.
No, I gave you nothing. I gave you nothing.
Gave me nothing.
I was very hopeless.
Very hopeless.
Yes.
And one of the things that really changed was the fact that she stopped communicating in general. I wouldn't get text messages. I wouldn't get phone calls. And if you know my mom at all, like, I will wake up today, like every morning, and have at least 5 to 15 text messages that she sent within a 1 hour period.
It's true. It's true.
So she's a very communicative person. She's always calling, always text messaging. She's the mom that, like, will call you, leave a voicemail, and then text, like, hey, call me. And you think that there's something wrong, and there's nothing. And so that was one of the things that really disappeared. She stopped communicating, and it became very scary, because obviously she became someone that she wasn't. Yeah.
Can you talk about why you stopped
Communicating?
Yeah.
Oh, sure. And I also want to talk about, you're right. I was looking for every other reason of why I felt the way I did medically. because of the stigma of mental illness.
Mhm.
I could not accept the fact that I had a mental illness.
Mhm.
And I was talking on the phone one day with a very dear friend, Meezy, and she said, Karen, you have to admit that you have depression and that you are mentally ill. And I said, I can't do that. It's that stigma that goes along with mental illness.
Mhm.
There were many times when I was sick where I would say to Daddy, I wish I had cancer instead of this, or I wish I had diabetes instead of this. Because society, if you say you have depression or mental illness, they don't know what to do with you, and it's almost a stigma. And if you have cancer, they'll say, "Oh, I can relate to that because my uncle had cancer, and these are the 2 or 3 treatments that you could go about," and off you
And it
go.
would be
Yeah,
very-
but the isolationism, that's where I isolated myself from everyone.
Mhm.
There were very few people outside the family that truly knew how sick I was.
Mhm.
Very few. I could count them on one hand, probably a half a hand.
Mhm.
How many people aside from you guys and Daddy
Mhm.
that knew how many times I was hospitalized, which was 6, that knew I was suicidal for 3.5 years and the depths of the depression. So that's why I isolated. And I didn't send you my love boxes either,
No.
which I do all the time.
She sends boxes of all of the gifts. And it's funny because, side note, just to put who she is as an individual and a mom, and how lucky we are, is that my college friends would say, like, my mom sends boxes every month, pretty much, just filled with, different presents and stuff like that. And they would say, like, man, everyone's parents love them. Like, that's, like, parents love their kids. Your parents really love you more than anything. And it was the constant communication. It was the constant packages. It was all of the interactions that they would have, which showed that, and that would just kind of disappeared and dwindled. And it wasn't ever that when that left, I never thought you didn't love me. It was just you are so lost, like so underground in this darkness that you are just not the person that you were. And that was really important for me to come to terms with, that if something were to have happened, it was not really like you or the mom that I knew that did something to themselves. It was this totally different person who had shown up, and it wasn't anything that I had done or anything that I had instigated this. And like, I truly don't believe if I had, done anything or put you off or, made you like mad in any way that would have pushed you over the edge. Like, now I see that. Now I see like there's nothing I could have done negatively that would have like hindered you. But in the moment, it's definitely like I'm treading on water. I don't want to, say or do anything wrong. But I think what was trying to be pointed out was like, why did you separate yourself from me? Like, why did you,
it's very
stop texting, stop calling?
It's very typical for people who are depressed to do that. And part of it is just the inability to admit how sick you are. And I knew in my heart the pain I was causing everyone, but I had an inability to stop the pain. So you want to just kind of isolate and protect your loved ones from the pain. You don't want them to have to witness that pain. But there truly is, that inability to voice it, to accept it, and to really, for me, to admit that that I was in a dark, dark place that I never thought I would ever end up in my life. It's just, that's where life kind of took me.
And despite like my mom opening up to other people and saying what was going on, truly, I mean, everyone knew. Like, that's how drastic the change was. Everyone knew that she was not who she was, and people would reach out to me. They'd reach out to my sister. They'd reach out to my brother and just be like, what can we do to help? Something's wrong. Something's off. Is she okay? And it wasn't that she ever said anything was wrong. It was just, that's how much of a change
It was
occurred.
dramatic. It was
Yeah.
a dramatic change.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very dramatic.
And even, yeah. So,
Yeah.
I guess back to my story was that I was in DC and I started work. And if you listen to my mom's section, she talks about that she did ECT treatments. And so during the time I was in anesthesia school, and these were treatments that I would actually do on people. I would do their anesthesia to make sure that they were asleep when they had these ECT treatments. And so, I mean, it would be like my dad would text me because my mom wouldn't. My dad would text me and just be like, oh, we're going to another treatment today. And it was like, I was at work doing them too. So it was a very weird experience to know what she was going through and what she was doing, and truthfully walking into the room to my patients and being like, this is my mom
No.
4 or 5 states away.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Wow. Yeah.
So,
Tough.
and I mean, in their eyes, you can tell that it's this lack of light that just is not there. And it's this haze and this, hopeless, very upsetting thing to see in someone else, even someone that's not your mom.
Yeah.
Even a patient, someone that you just met 3 minutes ago. It is so blatantly obvious, though, how lost and confused and hopeless and worried, scared these people are. And so I saw people who were doing ECT treatments for the first time, and I saw people who had been doing them for 10, 15 years, and talked to the doctors. And, I was very against my mom getting the treatments. I don't know if she mentioned that, but I was very adamant that she not do it, just because I saw these people's medical records. I talked to the doctors. I knew that the probability of it working based on everything else she had done was very low. I knew what the side effects were, and that these side effects, in my opinion, didn't outweigh the possibility that maybe for a week or two she felt better, because that at most was what these people were getting, even after years and months of this treatment. And a lot of times it would be something where they would go get it for a few weeks, be fine for months, come back. It wasn't a cure-all. It was fixing the symptoms and just kind of putting a Band-Aid over it. So I was very against her going to get these treatments, and obviously based on what I had seen. So going through school and not being able to come home and see her, and being very distant was very hard. My sister felt the same way, and we would always call, like, asking what we could do, how we could help. And my dad and my brother are very private people, so a lot of the things that happened were hidden from my sister and I for a really long time. And it was almost harder that way because we didn't know the reality. And then when the reality would present itself, it was like getting hit in the face with a ton of bricks, because it was like, oh my gosh, mom is still this sick. Because as I said earlier, there was times where it was easy to just put that on the back burner, and not that we intentionally did it, but it was in order to survive and in order to be able to live our daily lives. I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional.
It's all right, sweetie. It's an emotional thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just remember, like, late night phone calls in the ICU. I worked as a nurse in the ICU night shift, and my sister would call me like 11 o'clock her time, 2 o'clock my time, and we would sit and talk for 2-3 hours about the best thing for my mom and what we could do, and coming home and stuff like that. But
You referenced the worst day. What was the worst day?
So it was towards the end of my mom's sickness. Well, before she was cured. And at this time, up until my mom was better, we actually didn't know how many times that she had been hospitalized. My dad wouldn't tell us. We found out about things in parts, and how bad it was in parts. And we thought it was going to be a great idea to come home for my dad's birthday and my mom's birthday because they are a week apart. And my sister and I were home. Mom was herself, in the sickness, which, if you've ever been around someone who has been deeply depressed, or, maybe you'll see the same signs where you would reiterate words.
Yeah.
You would reiterate sentences. You couldn't have a straight conversation. It would be the same conversation 6-7 times over again, and you play the same game 14, 15 times over and over again. And it was like you couldn't get out of this mindset, and you kept asking about us all the time. And it was, hard to sit there and just watch you struggle. And, we would try and tell you to go do things. We try to go on walks. We try to do certain things, and you were just so tired and exhausted, and we felt hopeless because we couldn't help you. And so she would do this thing. I don't know if you explained what you did, or
Well, I don't remember. Go ahead.
well, probably,
No,
but she would leave a note or not, and she would get in her car and she would drive off. She would just disappear.
Yeah.
And so that happened on Friday. She just disappeared, and it's like you hear that these things happen, but until you're actually there and you're experiencing them, it's like surreal. So my brother had said oh yeah, mom left, and being so far away, you're just like, oh, she left, it's not that big of a deal. But it is a big deal, but it was like, you at this point you found her. It wasn't like I was never in the moment of she's gone, I have no idea where she is, we need to find her. So my brother ended up finding her, driving, pulled her aside. We took her back home, and we had a family discussion about, if we should admit her. And my sister and I were like, yes, absolutely. She needs to go to the hospital. She needs to be admitted. Do you remember any of this? Oh, that is so creepy, because we were having.
I remember leaving the house and
right.
all that, but no.
We were having straight up conversations, you need to be admitted, you need to go home, or not home, you need to go to the hospital. And my dad was very adamant, no, she'll be fine, trying to be the protector, trying to take care of us, trying to, make everything okay, because we had come home to have this big family weekend. So we end up having my mom stay. We don't admit her that night. And the next morning, we have coffee on the porch. That's our morning thing. And so I'm sitting on the porch, and my mom's not out there yet. And all of a sudden, I see my brother run down and to the garage and come back. And my dad's up, and he's running to the garage and coming back. And then my brother opens the door to the porch and was like, mom's gone. And it was just sinking feeling. It was raining. It was 7 a.m. It was, a typical Cleveland day. If you haven't been here, it is always raining, in my opinion.
It is always
cloudy,
raining.
gloomy, just the worst type of weather. And so me and my brother get in a car. My dad's in a car. My sister's in a car. We are just scouring the city we live in, trying to find my mom. And for the next 3 hours,
oh my God.
For the next 3 hours, my brother drove me to different parks in the area, because she would always go to water, Joe said. And I sprinted.
Oh, honey.
It's okay.
Oh, no. I don't even remember this.
I know, because I haven't told you this story.
I don't remember this.
Because I sprinted through the different parks looking for my mom's dead body.
Oh, sweetie. Oh, my gosh.
Oh,
I'm so sorry.
it's okay. And so we get a call, and we find out that she was found by the fire department because my brother and my dad had this down by
Yes.
now.
Yeah.
She was found by the fire department. She had been walking for like 5 to 6 hours at this time without shoes on, in the rain, in her pajamas, with this just like the haze over her eyes. And we took her to the hospital. And
I do remember the ambulance. I remember Mary in the ambulance. Yeah. Yeah.
and then we met you at the hospital, and then you got
Yes.
readmitted
Wow,
to
that
the
part's coming
hospital.
back. Yeah.
And then the second most stressful moment, I guess, of everything was that my sister and I went to go visit my mom
Mhm.
in the hospital. And I mean, I had seen her, a day before, being anxious, being ruminating on thoughts.
Mhm.
You would play with your fingernails or something.
Yeah, I did. I
You
used-
did, yeah. Picking at herself.
Mhm.
And we went and visited her, and I mean, it's an experience putting your stuff into a locker
Mm.
and being walked back to see your mom, and you only have a certain amount of time that you can see her, and you're sitting in a room and you're not on the couch at home or anything like that. And you hear that when people are depressed or anxious, that their insides are just in turmoil, that they're just twisted, and her entire body was morphed. And I don't know if you remember this, but you were just like, your whole body was like this, like you just couldn't even sit straight. Your entire being was not a normal individual. You just like, and Mary and I both commented on it afterwards. You were twisted out, like your arms, your legs, and you could physically see the depression and the anxiety and the turmoil and the darkness. It was just like surrounding you in this moment. And to sit there and not be able to do anything was the most stressful, heartbreaking, overwhelming, almost like demeaning moment, because you just feel like you have failed and there's nothing you can do to help this person who you love so much, who's given you so much. And you're like, this is not that it wasn't ever real before, but like, my God, like there's nothing that can help this person. And that's how it felt, in that moment.
So sorry.
It's okay.
I don't remember a lot of that. And part of the ECT treatments I found out after the effect was your brain is enabled to form memories when you are receiving ECT treatments. So that could be part of it. But also the depression is so debilitating that there are other things that the kids tell me that I did and I don't even remember doing them. Yeah.
So that was June of
my birthday. 2017. Yeah, 2017. Yeah.
And my sister ended up staying home that summer and helping my mom or my brother and my dad, because they were kind of at their wits' end. And I don't know if Dad ever told you this, but we had started looking into like facilities to put you in. One was in Baltimore on the East Coast.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it was like, it just became too overwhelming for my brother and my dad to take care of. It had been years. And I mean, it's years of waking up and not knowing if your wife or your mom's going to be there, if they're going to have to go try and find her again.
Yeah.
And God bless them. I mean,
it was hell.
It
was hell.
Yeah, it was
hell.
And so we had those discussions in like August and September. And then kind of, I don't think I even heard about Father Stoller or anything he said until later. But until the day I die, I will remember November 11th, 2017.
Yes, ma'am.
And my mom had went on a vacation with her friends, which was crazy in itself because my mom didn't leave my dad's side ever. And it was, I think, like a safety for her and my dad, protection for him, but she was with her best friends, and it was they had been contacting me the whole time. What can I do? What can we say? How can we help? And we had separate emails, which I think are important, because no one's going to understand. At least in my experience, no one understands unless they were there and saw. So my mom's friends knew she was sick. They knew she wasn't right. Couldn't comprehend, like, she can't leave my dad's side. Like, this can't, you know,
It
they
can't
just
happen.
didn't even,
They
because
didn't.
you didn't see them for a year, like a long time.
Well, I would see them like maybe twice a year, but
Yeah.
they didn't see the day-to-day, every day,
Right.
constant, what was going on.
So she went on a vacation with them, and my dad was able to fly out to Baltimore, and I was going to meet him in the car. I was with my boyfriend at the time. My mom was supposed to fly home, and one of our family friends was supposed to pick her up. Do you remember this conversation that you had with me? Mrs. Davis was supposed to pick you up.
I remember that.
And
Yeah,
she calls
I do.
me.
Yeah.
And I mean, anytime I got a call from my mom, it was like, oh God, like,
What happened?
brace yourself.
What
Something's going to happen. But this is going to sound horrible. It was a call from her, a text from her. I knew that she was alive.
Mm-hmm.
So it was almost,
A
relief, a breath of fresh air. So she calls me, and I'm like, all right, what am I going to have to deal with? Driving to go see dad, like, who knows? And the minute she spoke, I knew she was completely different. And I don't know how I can explain it, but it was like she was back. Like, she was herself again. And I don't know what it was, her inflection. It was like how she said things. It was your voice. It was your confidence in what you were saying.
Okay.
And she was asking for our neighbor's number or something like that in order to tell her that she was going to stay longer.
Yeah.
I
remember making that phone
in
call.
Illinois.
Yeah.
And I put down the phone and I look at my boyfriend at the time and I go, oh my God, I don't know who that woman is, but it's not my mother. Like, it is someone else.
Yeah.
That is not her. And I call my sister, I am trying to find this number for her. And I call my sister and I go, Mary, have you talked to mom in the last few days? And she's like, no, why? And I was like, mom's staying. And she's like, what? And I was like, mom's staying in Illinois. And she's like, is she okay? And I'm like, yeah. I was like, you need to call her right now and tell me I'm not going crazy, because this woman is like someone completely different.
Mm-hmm.
And Mary's like, you're lying. Like, I don't believe you. And I was like, no, Mary, I'm telling you, like, this is not our mom. Like, something has happened. Go and meet my dad, and my dad's smiling, and I go, Dad, like, mom's staying? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, and you're okay with this? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, what's going on with that? Like, what's changed?
What's happening? Yeah.
And he's like, I don't know. She just wanted to stay. And so I knew something was brewing. I knew something had happened. And it was that quick. It was like a snap of the fingers. She was we call her lovingly Karen 2.0. She was just so absolutely 180 degrees different. And I came home for that Thanksgiving.
Yes,
and my sister still hadn't come home.
Yes.
And it was almost scary how much of a difference you were in, because the last time I had seen you was, when I was running through the forest looking for you.
Yeah.
And to come home and see her be just so lively and filled with joy. And she couldn't, you couldn't see it. Like, you saw it, but you had your moment like a few days before that, because
I had my moment a couple days after that.
Right.
Yeah.
But then when I came home, even, you still didn't know how much different you were from where you used to be.
Right.
You still were kind of in this I'm just going to get the mail. I'm just going to the grocery store. I'm like, you don't just go to the grocery store, Mom. This is a 2-hour process of us telling you, go get your clothes on, go to the car. Yeah. And so it was so drastic that, in my experience in the medical field and seeing these people go through ECT and seeing all the medicines my mom had been on, to this day, there is no other explanation for me other than it was a miracle, because modern science cannot do or like conquer the type of illness that my mom had. And it's truly mind-blowing being in the medical field and hearing people be like, oh, there's going to be miracles. My family member is going to get better, you know, being there when people are dying in the ICU and their family members are still praying that everything's going to work out, knowing like medical wise, this, you know, it's highly unlikely. And then to see it actually in work and see it happen is just, there is no other explanation. Like there's, truthfully,
It is truthfully.
it's not. And then it was later during that Thanksgiving, so a few weeks after that phone call, I got that I found out what had happened with Father Stala, and it just, all the pieces started falling into place. And I called my sister and I was like, you need to get out here because mom is like creepy.
Mom's creeping us out
Mom's
here.
creeping us out. She is not who she was.
She's not who she was.
Um,
Not who she was.
Can you tell a little bit
Yeah.
about what your understanding of Father Stala in this?
yeah, so correct me if I'm wrong, but the story in my head is that Father Stala had done a novena for you,
Mhm.
and it was to Saint Therese,
Yes.
right?
Right?
And her whole I guess way she presents herself is
Yes.
through roses.
Yes.
And so he had finished the novena, and on the last day
Of the novena.
of the novena came down, and his kitchen table was filled with roses, and then came and told my mom that she was going to be healed.
Right?
And I didn't hear any of that until
Yeah.
afterwards.
Yeah.
All I knew is that woman on the phone was not my mom, and I didn't know who it was.
Who is it? Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And up, like, from that point on, her healing just, I mean, it shone through so much. Like, you just every day kept getting better and stronger.
Mhm.
And to the point where people started to question, like, if you were in a manic state.
Joseph thought I was a manic. He thought
A lot of
I
our
was- he
family
I was
thought
bipolar.
that she had turned manic because
Right.
it was that strong. You were just, whoo! You need,
It was a little hard to take for a while.
she was a lot.
I was
she
a
was-
lot to deal
she
with.
was a lot
I mean,
to
I
deal with.
usually am anyway, but this was like the
This is
rock
something
star.
else. This is Karen 2.0.
Scared 2.0. Yeah.
And even, I mean, to me, and I talked to one of our dear family friends, Gail. I would talk to her because she's an older and knew my mom during before you got sick.
Yes.
And she was an adult version,
Yes.
like view of how my mom was before she got sick, what she dealt with as a third party, you know, seeing her before that, when she got sick, and afterwards. And I would ask Gail, I would be like, is this how my mom was before she got sick? Because I was a kid. I didn't know. I'm in high
You're not
school,
aware.
college,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I just know what I know. But I was like, from an adult perspective, is this who she was before she was sick? And she's like, kind of, but like in better. Like, she's lighter, she is happier, she is, you know, and it's just the stress was off of her, the anxiety was gone away, and you started to sleep better. But still, I feel like you still struggle with sleep, and
I do.
and it's
I do. I do.
so it's almost like that's not even something from a medical perspective, because obviously, like, my whole brain is working like, how did all of this fit in? Like, maybe she started sleeping better, maybe it was this, but none of that has really changed. It's
No.
just,
No.
as you
Well,
say,
the,
you
the,
woke up.
the cognitive came back
Yeah,
within like 6 months because I couldn't even balance my checkbook.
right.
And then the physical, because I was so debilitated from
Right.
3 years of no sleep. That took a year.
Yeah.
But when I was in spiritual direction with Father Stala, what happened, what you saw,
Mm-hmm.
okay, was a gradual kind of moving toward healing.
Mm-hmm.
But what then really happened was this fire hose of grace.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a spiritual healing that was like rock star, off the charts, and complete and utter joy and energy, the depression gone, the anxiety gone. Let's get to work. Let's get busy. Let's go on with life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's do something good with this,
Mhm.
right? And I was high on joy for like 9 months. That's the way to put it.
She
High on
was.
joy for 9 months.
Yeah, you
Like,
were.
you couldn't tie me down.
No, you couldn't.
Could not tie me down.
So I
Could
guess
not tie me down.
in my life or my spiritual life, ultimately what, this whole thing has truly done for me. And I would say, despite where you are, in your spiritual life, is just kind of the thought that even in the darkest hour, even in the depths where it seems that there is no hope, that this person is never going to get better, that, this is who I'm going to have to live with for the rest of my life, or, as long as this person chooses to be around, even in those like super dark moments, that it's possible that something can happen. And I say this with my medical background, I say this with my experience and what I've gone through and seen with my own eyes, that there's hope and that miracles can happen, and that with God and through God, all things are possible. Because you can't be running through the woods looking for someone's dead body and 4 months later have them be, a woman that you don't even recognize. That is not medically possible. And so for the rest of my life, at least, no matter where I am on my journey, or, how I feel or how close I feel or far I feel, I know with certainty that God's real, that all things are possible, that all things, there is no hopeless moment. There is no place that is so deep and so dark and so lonely that it can't be fixed, because I've seen it.
You've seen it.
Yeah.
We lived it.
I lived it.
We lived it. Yeah.
That is for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. It's just amazing the things I don't know, even yet, and how I think the point is communication about it and talking about it and understanding family members. And one of the things that was really huge, I heard right after, and I mentioned this in the other video, I heard God right after say the word was restoration, and that our family had been through hell for 3 months, and that it would take a time. 3 years, sorry, 3 years. Yeah, okay. And it would take a while for the family to restore, and to heal from that, as far as just maybe processing it or being able to understand it,
and having talked to my siblings, I think that we all dealt with it much differently.
Mm-hmm. Oh, sure.
In my opinion.
Sure.
Obviously they can speak for themselves if they end up talking, but from my experience, I was just happy. I was just, everything was just in place again. It was as it should be. My mom was better. It was a miracle. I needed no other explanation. Obviously, at the very beginning, I tried to not wish it away, but think it away, reason it away, let's say. And there was no other reason other than, divine intervention. And so it was easy for me to accept. It was just, this is how it is. Obviously, you are waiting for the other shoe to drop. This is wonderful. When is she going to relapse? And it took probably 6 months, 8 months, for it to really be like, all right, this is life. This is how it's going to be for the rest of, for my sister, she, I think, dealt with a lot more issues trying to understand why it had to happen. Maybe I'm wrong. Obviously, I don't know, but just my experience with her. And why, and my brother,
he thought I was bipolar. He was convinced that I was manic. And we discussed that. We would sit down and we discussed that one day. And I assured him that I was never going back where I was, because my mental capacities were rock solid. Yeah.
And you would say that to me too. I think I even expressed to you like a little bit of
you did.
Fear.
Yes, you did.
And it was like your It was
You called it sick Karen.
Yeah.
Yeah, is sick Karen ever coming back? And I said, oh no, she's gone forever. Because I knew it. I just knew.
Yeah. And I mean, when you said it, like you could just tell in your eyes that it was gone.
Yeah.
Like it was just very apparent. I was like, all right, well, it's gone.
We're moving on.
We're moving on. Through it all, not that I don't think our family's ever not been close, but I think that truthfully, we're the only, I mean, other people can hear the story and they can, see the difference, our neighbors and your friends and stuff like that. But it's something that ties us all together more than anything else, more than blood. It's having been there together, walked through it together, and come out the other side together and experiencing that, because no one else will ever have that experience.
No.
And I truly believe that everything happens for a reason. And so immediately when all of this, filtered out and you got healthy, I think I was one of the first ones. I looked at you and I was like, so when are you going to write your book? Like something good has to come out of this.
Right.
And it's not just you getting better.
No.
That is obviously wonderful. It's not just our family healing from this, but it's like this happened for a reason, and it's your responsibility and duty and job now in my head for you to do something with this. And that's why it's made me so happy to hear that like you guys have been working on this and creating something amazing for people who are experiencing that now, and not just the depressed people, but especially the families of depressed people or anxious people, or anything that you're struggling with or going through. And that was one of the things that I told my mom off the bat was like, I know that this is going to help people who are sick.
Mm-hmm.
I know more than anything that this is going to help people who are closest to them, because those are the people that are thinking clearly. Those are the people that can truly process what's going on and like help this individual.
Right.
So that was like my second thing too. It's like, all right, so what are you going to do with this? And you're going to focus on the families, right? Like, give me something. I need a direction. And I didn't have any.
Right.
And luckily I had in my lifetime from like high school on, probably every year to 2 years would be helping someone who was depressed. And that was something I don't know if I ever told you, but to the point where 3 to 6 months before my mom got really sick, my best friend from school told me that she wanted to commit suicide. And so I was helping her. And then it was like, all right, what is this leading up to? Like, what's going to happen in my life? And then you got sick. And so I luckily had some tools, like I know kind of what's going on, but until it happens to the person that's closest to you, you feel helpless. You feel like you don't have anything to use. You feel like you're trying to solve the problem, and the problem has no answer at the time. So
and to that point is I remember you telling me about that, and with your friend telling you that, you stepped up to the plate. You were there for your friend, and you made sure that she got help. You even drove her to her appointments, if I remember correctly. Yeah. And you made sure that she had help and that she had support. And I think that that's really important for family members. There is such a thing as confidentiality. If like your friends or your family members are depressed, and if they do express, that they have suicidal ideation or anything like that, but if they say that they are suicidal, bets are off. You have to step in. Yeah. You have to do the best you can for those people. They're not thinking rationally anymore. When you get to that point, you're not thinking rationally, and you have to think rationally for them.
I do have a question off that, Mom. When you were writing, so my sister and I have never seen any of the letters that my mom wrote. But when you were writing them, and never do I want to read them or see them, but did you feel like it was yourself, or did you feel like you were someone else? Because even like you were depressed and you could see it, but even how depressed you were that moment versus how depressed you were after, like you were once you were admitted, you could see that like it was a totally different person in that sense. So could you feel yourself like even getting deeper?
Yes.
And do you remember like writing those letters, or like who was it? Your own voice?
It was, the darkness was so overwhelming, and the sense of hopelessness was so great that, and the overwhelming thing was, I can't do this to my family anymore. And my thoughts became so distorted. And that's what happens. Your thoughts get so twisted that, and I mentioned this in the other video, that good becomes bad and bad becomes good. That I got to the point where I was so twisted in thought that the merciful thing was to just stop it all.
Mhm.
Because I knew the stress, the anxiety, the toll this was taking on the parents or the family. And I even said to Father, it would be better if I wasn't here. And then he would stop me and he'd say, no, you are not thinking rationally, right? I'm thinking rationally. That's not a rational thought. And he would sit and he'd go, I'm healthy, you're not, right?
Yeah.
So I'm telling you today that that's not the way to do this,
Yeah.
right? Or to stop that thought. Because it's just, the darkness is so overwhelming.
And going off of your point of saying like it's just better if I'm not here,
Yeah.
for those listening who are there in the darkest moments, in the depths of it, there is no moment that is better without you in it. And I remember driving with my boyfriend at the time, and I started crying, thinking like, because at the end of the day, you were still my mom. I still loved you. You weren't the person that I remember, but like imagining life without you in it was so overwhelming and so distressing that, I mean, I started crying and he's like, what's wrong? And I was like, oh my God, my mom's not going to be there to walk me, like to see me get married. And it didn't matter if you were sick. It didn't matter, you know, if we had to strap you in the car and bring you to the church. The fact that you would be present is what matters, no matter what your mental state is. And so I know it feels probably like I want to rid everyone of who I am right now because they're not worthy of it and I'm not worthy to be here. But truthfully, I can't express how much you mean to the people that are in your life, and never, ever is it a better world without you in it. And I know that's hard to believe, but I mean, I lived it. I was the family member. Like, I know how hard it is for them and how much of a struggle it is for them because they just want you to be better, but they want you to be alive ultimately.
Amen. Amen to that, right? Huh? Amen to that. And I think that's the way we end it, right? Right. Praise God that I'm here. Thank you, Saint Therese. Right? My girlfriend.